Yo, what's that? What's that thumbnail? What's it? What is it? What's it supposed to mean? Okay, I'll tell you, but not just yet. So this isn't really like a 100 subscriber special or anything, and especially because I started recording this before I was at 100, and now we're at 100. So if you would like to take me beyond 100, you know, it'd be very much appreciated. But yeah, not really like a special or anything. And before I delve into the topic of the video, one more question. Do you like these less than serious videos? Because a lot of times I'll do like recaps, or I'll talk about things that were announced, or I'll do like stats, things that are all like factual, informative, that kind of thing. I think a lot of people might find that sort of thing dry. I find it very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of the people that watch the videos also find it interesting. But I mean, it seems like a lot of times the videos that are not that sort of thing do better. So, I mean, I guess, you know, let me know if you like that kind of thing. Probably in the future, I'll make some amount of it still. You know, maybe more, maybe less, hard to say. They're fun to make. It's a nice reprieve from the other thing, even though I do enjoy doing the other thing as well. So, right, with all that being said, what is this video about? So, this is, of course, going to be an opinion piece, really, and it's not going to be objective or anything, but I'm going to try to make it less subjective than I could, I suppose. So this is still, as always, from the perspective of an NAL enjoyer, but I'm going to try to not let that skew things, not let that change my opinions on the matter. But this is really just matters of opinion. So I'm going to talk about who are the quote-unquote good and evil teams, the heroes and the villains of the event. And not to say that everyone's going to be hero or villain. Some I might peg as neutral. But let's just talk about this. So we'll start from the top, BDS. And keep in mind, I do have reasons for them being good or bad. Like a lot of times if they're... well, I'll just explain it as we go. Okay, so BDS. One of, if not the best team in Europe at the moment. They were... I mean, they lacked a little bit last stage in that they got 4th seed going into the major, but they did take it to a top 4 finish. So I guess they made it to where their seed indicated. Although I guess, I mean... the seed is for the region, so there's 4 seeds. So technically they were seeded to losing groups, right? But no matter. BDS, I think, have been regarded as generally a brawn over brain kind of team in the past, and probably still up to the present. They rely a lot on their gun skills because they can. They are pretty much all of them really solid gunners. They have some of the better gunners in Europe and even in the world, you'd say. I mean, Shaiko's got to be up there, right? And then Bride is probably one of the more well-perceived gunner support players. And then, I mean, Renshiro, Alems, Rafal, they're all good as well. No real weak spots in that team. Maybe you could pick one, but, you know, that's not what we're here to do. Right, for that reason, you could maybe peg them into more the evil camp, the villain camp, because Siege is, compared to other shooters, more of a thinking man's game. Right, there is a lot more that goes into the strategies, the tactics, the decision making, and gun skill is important, but you can get by with less gun skill, I feel, in this game, especially with not only the things I just mentioned, but also the recoil patterns being pretty easy in this game, although becoming less and less so as the devs decide to nerf more and more guns recoil. Nerf in that made it harder to control. So, right, for those reasons, I'm going to peg BDS as evil. So, well, it feels so weird to say evil. Villains, okay, so because they did really well at the last event, and they've been, like, beating up on everyone in Europe for the most part for quite some time, so I'm going to have them as bad. Now, Empire, they, back in the, and the Empire, their name sounds evil, right? And that's actually where they're going to end up. Way back in the day, they sort of came out of almost nowhere, seemingly nowhere, to challenge G2. They were all of a sudden, it seemed like the 2nd best team in the world. Of course, it had been Evil Geniuses for some time, but then Evil Geniuses started to fall off. G2 was still on top, and Empire came for the throne. And they've also been known as, I mean, the Russian machine, and I guess in, you know, various sci-fi stories and whatnot. The cyborgs are evil, the androids are evil, or whatever. And, okay, so they did really well way back when, and then sort of in the middle of their story, I'd say they had some struggles. They've been an up and down kind of team. They've been, you know, down and dejected and whatnot, but now they're sort of back at the top. 2nd seed for this major. I think they were 1st seed for Europe for last major, and they were runner-up for the major in its entirety. So they seem to be back in form, and I mean their players, yeah, like Joystick had a period where he was struggling quite a bit, and now he seems to be pretty much back in form, and Dan looks like one of the best players in the world again. So they are looking quite menacing, and I'm going to peg them as villains. Okay. Vitality and Rogue, I might lump them together some amount because their stories are sort of similar, right? If you average out their relatively recent results for the last, maybe year or two, they're probably about average because Rogue has been on top and the bottom, and Vitality is usually just sitting around the middle. So, again, average to the middle. And finally, we will see them at an international LAN, which we have not for quite some time. Vitality, I think, and probably Rogue, both. It's been a few years. I want to say it's been like several years for Vitality. And Rogue, I'm not even sure because it's very hard to track. Because the Rogue org in particular was in NA, and then it was in APAC, and now it's in EU. And this squad has, it's changed up his rosters quite a bit. And this seems like the roster that has been working since they added Prano, right? Yeah, they added Prano. And Cryan's a fairly recent addition. Then Aces, Rips, and Leon Gids have been here for a decent amount of time. And I think for the reason that they are sort of underdogs, I think a lot of people are saying they're picking up on the community thinking that they might be underdogs, and they're kind of shooting it down. They're saying, it's mostly for Vitality, they're saying, they're all really good players. They've been just below making majors. They're several really good LAN players, this and that. And so I mean, compared to like BDS and Empire, we'll see what actually happens. I'd still say if you had to pick underdogs as far as Europe goes, it'd be these two. Not only because they're the bottom two seeds, but they weren't at the last major, and they've had their share of struggles. So I'm gonna put them both in the hero camp, I guess. If it comes down to them versus some other, established big dogs, I'm sure people that don't have a preferred team of them versus their opponent, they'll root for them, the underdogs. And I'm sort of undecided on who I want to root for, if I want to root for either of these teams of the major. I've seen them play. I've watched EUL to some extent, but I got to see them play a little bit at this event, so internationally, to see a little bit. And if I see some stuff I like, maybe I'll be rooting for them. As far as Europe goes, as a whole, I mean, when I pick teams, it's sort of arbitrary sometimes, and I just at some point decided to root against BDS. I think Empire throughout the years has been my favorite EUL team, so I will in some capacity be rooting for them, and then I'm hoping to see something I like out of one or both of these teams to root for them. But so anyway, so we got a couple of villains, a couple of heroes. Okay, let's move to NA. This is gonna be a little bit different. Okay, Space Station, you can maybe have them as villains because, I mean, it's been quite villainous, their treatment of their NAL counterparts in the server. Of course, they seem like a respectable gentleman outside the server as far as I understand it, but yeah, they've been absolutely decimated everyone for the last two stages. Hot and Cold's been going nuts, and now the roster looks, I mean, I don't even know if I can say better than they did before, because disregarding their slightly lackluster performance at Mexico, they dropped all of 2 points in stage 2 of the NAL, and now they dropped only 3 points. And they were both close games. In the first stage, of course, it was an overtime game, and they lost that to Dark Zero. And then this stage, they only lost to Sonics, and I think that was a 7-5, so another close one. And I still think if they hadn't gone to Coastline, I don't remember what the other map they would have gone to is, but if they hadn't gone to Coastline, I think that they might have actually taken that game. I'm gonna put Space Station as heroes because I'm massively biased, and maybe not so much. If they had done better at Mexico, I might not have them in this camp. But because they underperformed, I think now people want to see them perform up to expectations, and them and Dark Zero both, I would say, are hoping that they have been revitalized in international LAN environment. Space Station by picking up Skies, Dark Zero by picking up Canadian. So we'll see what happens there, and I'm gonna, so bias or not, I'm gonna put Space Station in the hero camp for now. Oxygen, this one's hard to pick. They weren't at Mexico, and so it's a little bit it's unclear. Like, they did underperform in NAL, to be certain. They got, what, 6th place in stage 2, 2nd place this stage, but 6th place in stage 2, which was the stage, of course, that qualified for Mexico. And that was coming off of a 1st place finish in the first stage. So unfortunately, there was no major for stage 1. We had SI around that time instead. And so, I mean, they probably can't complain about it too much. Getting first place, you get just extra prize money and points without even having to do well at a major. So, I mean, it worked out well for them, but I'm sure they wanted to play internationally. But they did get to play at SI, and they were there. And they were the second highest placing NA team behind TSM, and they are not here. So, of all the NA teams, Dark Zero and Auction and Space Station were at SI. And I think Dark Zero and Space Station both got first rounded. I think Dark Zero got knocked out by Furia and Space Station by Team 1. And so I guess I want to say it was first round. Unless Dark Zero was upper bracket and then they lost twice, but I think they were lower bracket. Space Station certainly was lower bracket. So anyways, I think they lost first round, and so they made it out of groups, let me be clear, and then they lost in the first round of the playoffs, but only like 3 teams got eliminated in groups or something. So, right, Auction, 5th, 6th place. Pretty good placement. TSM got 4th place, and then the top 3 were all LATAM teams, and the team that they tied 5th, 6th was I don't actually. Oh, it was Faze, wasn't it? I think it was Faze. And then 7th, 8th, I think was BDS and Empire. I want to say. Anyways, so I'm actually gonna have Oxygen neutral here. I'm not gonna have them as heroes or villains. I can't think of a particularly good reason to put them in either of those camps, and so I'm gonna put them there. Yeah, just for the reason that I don't know, because I can't think of a good reason, and I don't want to arbitrarily assign every single team to hero or villain. I want a little bit of nuance and a little bit of flow, and okay, whatever. Let's move on to Sonics. Okay, so they did pretty poorly at Mexico, as you can see. I mean, 13th through 16th, that's the lowest you can place. So yeah, they won that first game that they played in groups against Team 1, the eventual tournament winner. So I mean, that's cool, get a win against them. But then they lost the next 5 in a row, didn't go to overtime in any of those. So I believe, I'm pretty positive that they didn't go to overtime. So they got all of 2 points out of 6 games. It's pretty rough, but this was, for most of them, their first international LAN, major international LAN, because I believe Super has played at major international LAN before, and I think maybe like Rexon or Yeti or something has played at international LAN, but it was like it was OGA Pit or a DreamHack or something like that, but certainly not an A tier or an S tier. But now they have played at, I guess is it an S tier event? Does it say up here? Are these? I'm getting distracted. I'm not actually sure if the majors are considered A tier event. Is SI the only S tier event? Is that how that works? I don't know. I feel like I do know, but I just can't remember. It's hazy. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna pretend I know, and I just can't remember. Make me look good. So, right, Sonics in the NAL, they are perceived by a lot of people, I guess, as the villains or whatever. And I mean, it's hard to pick villain when they did so badly, right? I'm gonna put them into neutral, right? Well, or I don't know. Should I put them in here? I'm gonna put them in neutral. I don't know. Hard to say, because perhaps the villain perception and they were shit talking even at Mexico. Remember Yeti was saying, or was it Yeti that, I don't know, he like flipped off the other team or something, and there was the meme of him saying, you're not that team T1, right? You're not that team. And then they end up winning, and so that makes him look kind of foolish. So perhaps that cancels out with their underdog status. I'm gonna put him in neutral for now. Of course, I want to see him win, just like I want to see all of the NA teams win, although in perhaps a certain order when it comes to over each other. But I, want to see NA beat the other regions. But so I'm gonna put them in neutral, and then Dark Zero, I'm gonna give them hero status as well. They were cut down in their prime, like 2 or 3 of their players. I thought it was 2 before, but I think I saw Hyper say something about it was 3. So Hyper in BC and somebody else, I don't know. 3 of them got sick when they were at Mexico, and they came out in groups and they surprised everybody. Not everybody. They surprised a lot of people. A lot of people thought they were gonna get knocked out in groups. They thought it was gonna be NIP and G2, I think, in their group that were gonna make it out, and then G2 was awful at the major. And Damwon surprised people, and so did Dark Zero. So it was Dark Zero and Damwon over NIP and G2. These other 2 teams that haven't really ever won anything knocked out the 2 former SI winners, and of course the NIP roster being like the reigning champions and the players, whereas G2 it's just the org. But still, you get the idea. They shocked everybody. But then they made it to playoffs, and not only did several of their players get sick, but they had to play the eventual tournament winner in Team 1. So, just bad all around. So I think they're looking for redemption, and Canadian, to be sure, must be looking for redemption as well. His very last international LAN that he played prior to this being SI 2021, where he rejoined Space Station for a short time to get, you know, destroyed out of the tournament by Team One. So, you know, Canadian, or no, yeah, that's correct. Because Space Station fought, he was still on Space Station. I was thinking for a second, Dark Zero, you know, they played Furia, but Space Station knocked out of SI. So Canadian got knocked out of SI by Team One, and Dark Zero, the rest of this roster, they got knocked out of Mexico by Team One. So they all have a grudge against these guys. Okay. And I'm gonna put them as heroes. I don't know. They sound, it's a scary sounding name, right? But I'll put them in the good camp. So I got what, like 4 good, 2 neutral, 2 villains. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make them fairly equal or not, but okay. So moving on, Faze Clan. So they did not go to Mexico either. Similarly to Oxygen, I think they had a pretty good stage 1 in Brazil, and then they didn't make it. They lost. They didn't make it to the top 4 of Copa Elite 6. I don't know if they lost in first round or second round, or if they got grouped or they got lost in the quarters or whatever it was, but they did not make it. It was you know, Liquid in this spot instead, along with Team One, Furia, and NIP that went to Mexico. And now Faze look like potentially the best team in Brazil once again. And way back when, it was always like Liquid and Faze, and then like NIP was in there at some point or points or whatever. And now like the top 6 teams or something, at least the top 5 teams from LATAM are like crazy good. Of course, these 4 plus Liquid, and then maybe even MIBR, although they didn't make it to this major, they didn't make it to Mexico, and that's a little bit weird considering they got 3rd place at SI, so I don't know what's going on with that. But anyways, Faze, I'm gonna go with neutral, because I mean, partially because similarly to Auction, it's hard to pick these things when they missed out on just the very last international LAN. Perhaps they are now once again the big bad of LATAM. They are the team to beat, and not very many teams did beat them. Like I think, of course, in the finals of Copa Elite 6, Faze beat Team One. That's how they got the 1st seed. And I think in their regular season match, it went 15 rounds, but Faze took that as well. And I don't even know who Faze lost to, if anybody. Like, for all I know, they won every game, but I don't think they actually did. They lost to somebody, or multiple teams or whatever. But okay, I'm just gonna put them on neutral. So yeah, I don't know, cop out maybe. Team One, okay, the reigning 6 major champions, the winners of Mexico, right? They won, and that was an absolute Cinderella story. I don't think at the beginning of the event anybody saw it coming. I mean, maybe if you, I don't know, if you just randomly pick, you have a 1 in 16 chance to picking them right. But yeah, absolute Cinderella story, especially with the way groups developed, the way it played out. It was insane how they had to win a certain, you know, win with a certain round count against CAG in that last game. They had to win, like, was it 7-3 or 7-2 or something? Anyways, and then they tied exactly, and I think this was the first time anyone's ever had to go to a tiebreaker in Siege, because there's so many factors that can break ties automatically. But they had the same like round count or round differential, and the same win percentage, and the same head-to-head. So they went to a tiebreaker, and well, Team One had all the momentum on their side. It would have been crazy if they lost, but they beat CAG, so they took playoffs away from CAG even, and it was BDS and Team One from that group to emerge. And then they won, right? They beat Dark Zero, they beat Liquid, which I mean perhaps was the greatest hurdle of all, and then in the grand finals they beat Empire. And all of it, like, they just, for such a young team, they seem to have just such stamina, such longevity, which was quite curious. Like Empire and Liquid, I think if I'm remembering right, they both got slapped up, I think, on the last map of each series. Yeah, didn't Liquid get like 7-0 in the last match? And I want to say Empire lost like 7-2 in their last map. And then Dark Zero, that was a 2-0. So they finished strong for sure. And I mean, reigning champions, like, they're the team to beat. You got to put them as villains at that point. So moving on to Furia. So these guys are gonna be heroes. They're gonna be good guys in this story. So, and with names like Miracle, Fantasy, and Rare, I mean, come on, those it's like, it's so on theme. And maybe Rare is like a little bit different, but like Miracle and Fantasy, they're such sprightly sounding names, right? And Rare even to some extent, and maybe even Highs a little bit. But anyways, they are quite a good team, and they've proven it. But since they've been proving it, it has been in recent times when LATAM has taken over. So they did fairly well at SI, like 9th through 12th maybe, but they got out of groups. They beat Dark Zero, right? And then maybe they lost just the very next round. But the only teams not from LATAM that placed above them were, and I guess if you're counting 9th through 12th, so just the same rankings, it was only like maybe 5 teams. Is that right? 4 teams actually, because I think Faze, Team 1, no, not Team 1, Faze, MIBR, Ninjas in Pyjamas, and Liquid all placed above them, and so the other ones were just, no way, is this not, hold up, 4, yeah, 4, okay, and then the other 4 were TSM, Oxygen, Empire, and BDS, right? So they were only outperformed from out of their region by 4 teams at SI. So, right, all of this to say that, like I was saying before, they have been really good, but perhaps overshadowed by the other LATAM teams now that they've experienced their absolute glow up. They made it out of groups at Mexico. I mean, they gave Space Station a run for their money, and they were able to beat Na'Vi in groups, so they made it out, but then they lost to, I guess, BDS, so perhaps the absolute, the most evil, villainous team versus perhaps the most, the noble of them all. I don't know. I mean, you can pick who the absolute #1 hero is of the event or whatever, the main character, the protagonist, but I think Furia is pretty close. A lot of people were telling me that this is their major. This is where they're gonna defy expectations and they might win the whole thing. You know, maybe they will. They're a good team, and they've especially been popping off lately, and I want to say Fantasy has been putting up insane numbers, both in just the Brasileiro and then also in Copa Elite 6. So hopefully he can pop off here, and the rest of his squad can as well, and they can show us what they're really made of. So Ninjas in Pyjamas, this is a difficult one because they are, of course, the reigning world champions. They won the most recent SI, but then they had an extremely lackluster performance in Mexico, and I don't know, people might just chalk this up to the Levron effect or something, in that they were talking about how they wanted to start a dynasty, and I think it was like their coach or something that was saying that in particular, wasn't it? I'm not 100%. Let me know if you are fully aware of that. Yeah, so no, they won the biggest tournament in the world, the most recent one, and there's like a tiny bit of an asterisk because teams had not been able to play internationally. That was the first international event in, I guess, a full year, because the last one before that had been SI 2020, and then, you know, due to previously unforeseeable circumstances, we didn't get to see any international play. And I guess, and maybe the reason LATAM is so dominant now is because they just happen to have the most really strong teams in their league, and so they got to hone their skills against each other. And then the leagues with slightly weaker teams, i.e. the other 3 leagues, stagnated a bit because they did not get to sharpen their blades against a bunch of top tier teams. Every league, of course, has some really, really good teams, but like NA, the bottom is pretty weak at the moment. So if they can rise up, hopefully it can bring all of NA up with them, the top teams included. So Nip, where do I want to put them? I was thinking villain, but perhaps they're more like neutral. Because yeah, I mean they need redemption more than almost anybody else. Last seed of LATAM, but 3rd and 4th seed is a little bit arbitrary because it was just determined by which team inevitably eventually won after they beat them. So it's like if Team 1 had beat Faze, then Nip would be 3rd, Furia would be 4th. I don't know. I'm just gonna put them neutral because again they have that whole big boss factor, but they've had struggles as of late and they are looking for redemption. So I'm just gonna put them in neutral. So is that I don't even remember what the totals. I'll try to count them at the end. Okay, and then APAC, of course, the region that I'm the least familiar with. This is gonna be a little bit difficult. I'm gonna start with Invictus instead of Sandbox because, as far as I understand it, Hysterix is not gonna be able to attend the event. He said something about a compulsory military service, and they have a certain amount of like break time or leave time or whatever it is, and he's used it all, and so he's not going to be able to get away for the major. So if they lose one of their core players, one of their good players, and they have to sub in a sub or, oh, God forbid, a staff member, it's going to be rough for them. They did not make it out of groups at Mexico, but they held their own. they were not the worst in the group, right? I think they were in the group of TSM, and TSM got last place in that group. And then what? It was Liquid, TSM, them, and Empire, right? Yeah. So that was a tough group, and I mean, they showed some of their stuff, but yeah, it just seems unlikely that they'll be able to make it to playoffs, missing one of their players. So I'm just gonna throw them. I mean, they're like, I'm just gonna throw them in neutral. It seems like maybe at this point I could put them in the hero status, but like, I don't know. You see some knight in shining armor pulling up, but he's got like, he's like naked and he doesn't have like a sword. Okay, it's like tough. He's not pulling up looking very heroic. Okay, and heroic is perhaps not the right word because the team heroic has not been looking too hot either. Sorry, Chiefs. Okay, Sandbox, moving over to them, and of course this was previously Mantis, previously Cloud9. These guys were not at Mexico, but I think at one point they were probably like the best team in APAC, maybe? I don't know, when they were Cloud9? Not sure. Killer squad though, I mean, Shael, is that how you say that? I don't know. Harper, Nova, MB Taylor, Static, all really good players. MB Taylor, I think probably one of the all-time, maybe I'm confusing him with somebody else, but I think one of the all-time killers of APAC. But where do I put them? Like it's really hard to put any of the APAC teams in villain, so I'm probably just like not gonna do it, right? But I can't just throw them all in neutral. So, I'm just gonna put these guys. Well, I'm gonna put them in neutral. I don't want to put too many. They can't have too many heroes. So I'm just gonna put these two neutral. I don't know, maybe arbitrarily so, but I'm going with it. Okay, moving over to Chiefs. Okay, so this is I'm gonna go with hero for them. So I don't even know that much about them. They're apparently a New Zealand-ish team. What is the moniker for people from New Zealand? I mean, they call them like Kiwis, right? But is that official or not derogatory? I don't know. Right? They're Oceania. Is Oceania that entire like Australia, New Zealand? Is it that? I think it is, right? Their brethren did not get to attend the previous major, Mexico. The Knights and the Chiefs. The Knights did not get to go to Mexico due to travel restrictions, and so finally their region, it's not the same country, but the same region, I suppose, is going to be represented. And I think people want them to show out. I think it's probably very unlikely they make it out of groups, but you know, it'd be cool to be proven wrong. It'd be cool to see, I mean, just any of the teams that are thought less of, to see them prove that they don't deserve to be thought of that way. And so I'll put them in hero. Okay, and then Damwon. So the best performing APAC team from Mexico, and I believe the only one to make it out of groups, right? Because CAG barely, Cyclops that is, barely didn't make it out. Invictus didn't make it out. Knights didn't get to go. Damwon did make it out, right? So they were probably the most impressive. Cyclops was good as well, but they just barely got edged out by Team 1 in that whole tiebreaker situation. Damwon, I mean, maybe they're the closest to villains, but like you can't watch these guys play yet and call them villains. So they're gonna be heroes, and maybe they're the hero of the whole event. Rin went crazy in a few games, and then also struggled in some other games. And I think they played with their coach or their sub or something for some of the games, didn't they? Instead of Cassang, I want to say. And as far as I understand, all their players are really good. I think I saw them all popping off in different instances. So let's tally it all up, but actually I think, because I'm now realizing that I didn't actually assign very many teams to the villain, evil role, whatever, I'm gonna move Faze and Nip also into villain, and part of the reason is because I wanted to fill more slots actually, but because at the moment LATAM is sort of the big boss region. They won SI, they won Mexico, so they seem like the region to beat, and so the teams that I was unsure of, I'm just going to move them over to villains. So that gives us what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 villains. And in terms of heroes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that what I said? Okay, so 7 and 5, and then that leaves 4 neutral teams, being Oxygen, Sonics, Invictus, and Sandbox. I think that's how I assign them. So okay, I mean, you know, maybe you enjoyed the video, maybe you didn't. It's super long, but I guess if you enjoy hearing backstories on teams or opinions on teams, or, I mean, it's sort of like analysis, but pretty surface level stuff, a lot of it. yeah, if you enjoy this stuff, maybe you enjoyed this, and if you did and you haven't watched my other videos, go check them out because there's a lot of stuff, maybe not exactly like this, but talking about similar subjects. And then I actually, after I finished doing all the teams and then I just did this quick little recap, I think I'm at like 102 subs, so I don't know why I'm getting so many subs just today. And I'm actually recording this the day before I'm uploading it, so I don't know, maybe I'll even have a few more by then. But I think that's it for this video. If you have any feedback for me, if you thought any of my opinions were just objectively wrong, somebody I thought was villainous should be a hero and somebody who was, you know, good should be bad, or I maybe didn't have a strong enough opinion on somebody and thusly gave them neutral positioning when they should in fact be hero or villain, or, you know, you want to give what other comment, or once again, you know, the likes, the subs, from my understanding, they help. I mean, I don't know, I'm not no YouTube aficionado, but it makes a difference, and bigger numbers makes me happy, I guess. So, right, with all of that being said, I will catch you in the next video.